They once saved a human. Years later, an entire fleet responded to the call. Part 1. The smoke came first. It rolled through the corridor vents of Cathara Station in thick gray sheets before the alarms even found their voice. The lights in Corridor 7 had already dropped to emergency amber, that particular shade of orange that does not mean be careful, it means be somewhere else. Half the ceiling panels had given up entirely. A stretch of wall 3M ahead had folded inward, exposing torn pipes that breathed steam in short, sharp bursts, like something injured trying to stay calm. Mara Vass stood in the middle of it, 24 years old, survey tech level 4, 2 years into a contract that her onboarding officer had described with a straight face as routine. Her data pad was in her right hand, screen cracked, a clean diagonal fracture corner to corner, and she was running her thumb along the break without looking at it. The way you trace a scar when you are thinking about something else entirely. The screen was dark, had been dark for 10 minutes. She was not running. Everyone else on Cathara Station was running. She could hear them, 200 people, making the very loud and very clear decision that they wanted to be somewhere that was not here. Boots on metal grating, voices calling names down corridors, the rhythmic percussion of emergency hatches slamming open. Their movement traveled up through the floor into her feet, a vibration that said, "Go, go, go." She stood still. A ceiling panel dropped ahead of her, caught by wire, and began to swing in slow arcs. She watched it. Her brain offered her the physics of the motion, pendulum period proportional to wire length, and she accepted this because it was easier than what her brain was also holding. Underneath it, she had done the math on herself quietly over the past several months, not loudly, not in a way anyone could see, at 3 in the morning in a bunk that was too small for the kinds of thoughts she'd been having, in a station that was too loud for the kind of silence she needed. She had looked at her own numbers and found them short. Not her survey metrics, not her performance scores, the other numbers, the ones that tell you whether your life is adding up to something. The answer she had kept arriving at was not one she wanted to look at again, so she stood in Corridor 7 and watched the ceiling panel swing and did not move toward the exit. The floor shook, not a tremor, a wave. Long, low, the kind of sustained rolling that comes from something deep in the station's core giving way completely. Somewhere behind her, a section of corridor folded in on itself with the sound of a building deciding to sit down. She still did not move. The hand that closed around her wrist did not ask permission. 4 fingers, rough-ribbed skin, each ridge sharp against her sleeve. The grip was absolute, not tight enough to hurt, but complete, the grip of something that has made a decision and considers the subject. Closed, it pulled. Her feet moved before her brain had any say in the matter. She was running without choosing to run. The corridor blurred past her. The alien holding her wrist was tall, significantly taller than she was, grayscaled with rigged shoulders and the compact, dense center of gravity of a body trained for hard physical work. He moved through the smoke without hesitating, ducked under a collapsed beam in one clean motion, and pulled her into a branching passage she had never mapped. Down a maintenance ladder she took the rungs by instinct, hand over hand, not thinking, through a narrow access tunnel running between the outer hall and inner plating, a space barely as wide as her shoulders, smelling of burnt coolant and something old and chemical beneath it. The station sounds chased them the entire way, grinding, a deep sustained crack that ran up through the walls, a pressure shift she felt in her ears, the kind that means a section somewhere nearby has stopped containing what it was meant to contain. He stopped at a cargo hatch at the end of the tunnel. It was old, hinges dark with rust, the locking wheel stiff from years of not being needed. He kicked it once, flat-footed, full weight behind it. The entire door buckled outward in one reluctant motion, and then cold air hit her face, clean and sharp, carrying the antiseptic bite of the emergency evacuation corridor beyond. They were through outer dock ring, emergency strips of orange and white light running along the floor. The station's exterior curved above them, lit from below by fire still burning somewhere in its middle levels, and 300 meters down the ring the evacuation pod docks, the last clusters of pods launching in pairs, dropping away into dark space and pulling toward the distant shapes of rescue vessels holding position. He let go of her wrist. He put both hands on his knees and caught his breath. His left forearm had 4 shallow parallel cuts across it from somewhere in the tunnel, a torn edge of wall plating most likely. He looked at them with the mild, unhurried attention of a man reading the last item on a grocery list, filed them away. Mara stood. She looked at the cracked data pad in her hand. She looked at the burning station. She looked at the Alien 3FT away from her, who had now pulled out his own communicator and was checking it with the businesslike focus of someone confirming a departure time. He was Verath. She had read the species orientation filed during her first week. Allied species, technically the kind of allies who shared mutual defense coordinates and nothing resembling warmth. Verse soldiers had a well-documented reputation for being extremely capable and completely indifferent to your appreciation of that fact. He looked up from his communicator. She was staring at him. He looked back with pale, almost colorless eyes and pupils wide and dark, and his expression carried exactly one message. He was waiting to find out if she had something to say. Why did you do that? She asked. Her voice came out level. She had not planned to say anything at all. He studied her, a slight tilt of his head, the Verth equivalent of a raised eyebrow. You were in the way of dying, he said. His standard was accented but precise, each word placed with care. I moved you. She waited. There was no more. That was the whole sentence, the whole explanation. No ceremony in it, no acknowledgement that the sentence described anything significant. He had seen something out of place and corrected it the same matter-of-fact way you'd set upright something that had fallen. She looked back at the station. All of level 4 was dark now. Another section groaned somewhere deep inside the structure and went quiet. You weren't supposed to be on that level, she said. No, then why were you a beat? Shortcut, he said. She looked at the cracked data pad in her hand, turned it over once. The screen was completely dead. Either the battery or the fracture had gone through to the board. It was never going to work again. She tucked it under her arm. Said he was already walking toward the pod docks. She fell into step beside him, not because he told her to, not because she had a plan, but because something in the flat, empty space behind her ribs had moved, not filled, just shifted, the way a room changes when someone walks through it, and the air settles into a different Shape she did not understand it then. The incident report filed 14 hours later. By the station surviving records officer. Listed her in a single line. Mara Vass. Survey Tech Level 4 recovered via cargo. Hatch outer dock ring assisted by Verth. Allied Personnel Subcommander Sethri. Third reach, she read that line in the secondary medical facility while a nurse wrapped a cut on her hand she hadn't known she had. She read it again, said the name out loud once, very quietly. Seth, the way you say a word that you know you will need again when you don't yet understand why. She folded the report, put it in the same pocket as the cracked data pad. She went back to work. She would carry both for 17 years. Part 2. 17 years is a long time to not think about something. Mara Vass had become very good at it. She was 41 now. Admiral Voss, 7th Human Fleet. Flagship UES Perennial, a title that still sat strangely in her mouth. Sometimes not because she doubted it, but because she remembered when there had been no fleet to speak of, when humanity's presence in shared galactic space had been measured in survey corvettes and diplomatic shuttles, and the careful tentative politeness of a species still figuring out how loud its voice was. 17 years ago, she had been a survey tech, watching a ceiling panel swing. Now she commanded 78 warships. The path between those 2 points was not a mystery. It was a series of decisions, each one harder than the last, each made with the same flat, careful economy she applied to everything. The economy of someone who does not waste movement, who does not spend energy on performance, who simply identifies the next right thing and does it. She had done that over and over for 17 years, and the next right things had kept pointing upward. She was doing paperwork when the signal came, real paperwork, the administrative kind that nobody pictures when they picture admirals, fleet fuel rotation schedules, a supply backlog from her chief engineer, Owen Grant, that had been sitting on 3 different desks for 4 months and had now arrived on hers with a note in the margin that said simply, "Please." She had approved it. She had moved on to the allocation report. Coffee on her right was cold. She had almost drunk it twice. She kept picking up her pen, writing something, setting the pen down, and reaching for the coffee without completing the reach. The pen, the coffee, the pen. Admiral Danny Cole was in the doorway. He was her communications officer, 27, from somewhere in Scotland, with the organized efficiency of someone raised by 2 engineers and the permanent mild expression of a man who has seen strain things at his post and processed them all into neat, labeled folders in his head. He was holding a data pad at a slight angle, the way he always held one when the information on it was unusual. Signal came in, he said. Civilian band. Ver encoding. She looked up. How old is the protocol? Our system took almost 3 minutes to recognize the handshake. I had to pull the legacy cipher manually. He stepped forward and placed the pad on her desk. It's decoded. I've attached the translation. She looked at the screen. Verth script. 3 short lines, and below it dies. Translation in small clean print. 3 words. We have trouble here. A coordinate string. Sender identification. Subcommander Sethri, 3rd Reach. Verth. Compact. She did not move. Danny stood across the desk from her. He had worked with Mara for 3 years. He had learned in those 3 years that the degree to which her face did nothing was in direct proportion to the weight of what she was holding. Her face right now was doing absolutely nothing. He had not seen it this still before, do you know? This contact, he asked. Yes, should I forward to the Coalition Liaison Office? Standard procedure for unsolicited. Verath banned, no. He stopped. She picked up the cold coffee, put it down without drinking it. Get me fleet readiness. Across all 78 ships, she said. Current positions, deployment windows, fuel states. She looked at the coordinate string one more time and tell Commander Lena Wade I need her in the tactical room in 20 minutes. Danny made a note. Then he paused because he was good at his job, and being good at his job meant knowing when not to ask a question as much as it meant knowing when to ask. One, Admiral, he said carefully. Should the crew be? Not yet, she said. He left. She sat with the signal. For 4 minutes, she did not read it. Again, she had it 3 words, a coordinate, the name she had set out loud in a medical bay 17 years ago, and filed away in a place she had told herself she was not keeping. She opened the bottom left drawer of her desk and reached to the back of it, behind a deployment map she had never unfolded. Her hand found the object without looking and knew the shape. She had put it there the day she moved into this office, and she had not taken it out since. An old data pad model, discontinued for over a decade, well past any manufacturer support. The screen dead, cracked in a clean diagonal fracture from corner to corner. She set it on the desk beside Danny's pad. 2 screens, one dead, one alive, with 3 words. She looked at them for a moment. Then she stood and went to the tactical room. Lena Wade was already there. She was Mara's tactical officer, broad-shouldered from Wales, with the quality Mara valued more than almost anything else in a senior officer. She never told you what she thought you wanted to hear. She gave you the numbers as they were and let you feel whatever you needed to feel about them afterward. Her honesty was not cruel. It was structural, like a wall that holds weight because it is made correctly. Myra put the coordinates on the display. Lena looked at them, looked at the surrounding space, did the calculation. Without being asked, reach of salt, Lena said. Outer colony, largest population center in the 3rd reach after the capital, approximately 11 million. She paused. That is deep in Verth sovereign space. Yes, what's the situation there? The Krathon expansion force has been tightening around that sector for 8 months, Mara said slowly. The kind of slow that means they've already decided. And they're making it look gradual. She looked at the coordinate, 9 Verath ships holding a perimeter around the colony. That's what Sethri has. Lena looked at her. Sethri, he knows one human. Mara said he sent this to the one human he knows. What does he expect you to do? Mara almost said something. Stopped, started again. He expects a reply and a relay to someone with authority. He doesn't know I have authority. He doesn't know what I have. Lena looked at the full fleet display. Danny had sent through 78 ships, positions and readiness states across the board. She studied it with the focused quiet she brought to every tactical picture. How many can we move in 48 hours? Mara asked. All of them. Lena said, no hesitation. Then we move. Lena looked up, not surprised. She was past surprise with Mara, something more like confirmation. A theory she had been holding quietly for 3 years being verified. All 78. All of them. The coalition will want an authorization basis. We have no treaty Obligation in Verath sovereign space. Command is going to ask, 1 soldiers. Word, Myra said. Lena looked at her. Write it up exactly that way. 1 soldiers word, if coalition command wants to argue the paperwork, they can. Do it after we're back. Lena wrote it. She did not ask what the sentence meant. Some sentences are not invitations to ask more, they are the complete answer, in the smallest available form, and you either understand them or you don't, and asking for more will not help you understand them faster. Mara went back to her office. She picked up the cracked data pad, the old one, the dead one, and put it in the inside pocket of her uniform jacket, left side close to her ribs. It had been in that pocket for so long that the lining had taken its shape, a faint impression worn in over the years. She went to the bridge. Danny was at his station. He looked at her. When she came in, she could see on his face the shape of several questions he was choosing to hold. Fleetwide channel. She said. He opened it. She stood at the front of the bridge, looking at the star map on the main screen. 78 ships, all of them. This is Admiral Vass, she said. We are moving to Verath space. Full deployment, all ships. Coordinates are being sent now. She paused, one breath. A Verth soldier moved one of ours out of the way of dying 17 years ago. Today we return the favor. Another pause with interest. She closed the channel. Danny sat still for 3 seconds, then he turned to his board and started sending coordinates. The bridge came alive. Around her, calm, focused, purposeful. No dramatics, just people who had signed on to follow her, doing exactly that. Perennial's engines woke beneath her feet. She felt it through the floor. That deep, full body vibration of a ship committing its entire weight to a direction. 77 other ships did the same. Across 12 sectors of human-controlled space, all of them turning toward the same point. She looked at the stars on the main screen. She had not thought about Sethri in years. Her hands, it turned out, had never agreed. Part 3. The galaxy noticed 78 ships. FTL signatures of that size did not pass quietly through monitored space. Each jump left gravitational ripples across a 12 light-year radius, precise, measurable, the kind of data that automated monitoring systems across 4 species were specifically designed to catch, log, and escalate. The Dravathi observation post at the edge of the Wreath sector recorded the signatures. First, logged them in sequence, passed the alert upward through 3 command layers in under 4 minutes. 78 human warships, identical vector, full burn. The intelligence officer filling out the standard report form reached the field for stated purpose of movement and typed unknown, deleted it, typed under investigation, left that in because there was no better answer, and the form was mandatory, and 78 warships moving in synchronized formation toward a single point had no standard field in any protocol he had been trained for. In the Dravathi Intelligence Station's main analysis room, Senior Analyst Girth stood at the display board and traced the vector with his finger from its origin point to its destination. He followed it all the way to the end reach of salt, he said. Verth outer colonies. One of his officers looked up. The Kathon have that sector under pressure? Yes, Girth said. Are the humans responding to a coalition call? Girth checked. There was no coalition call, no joint operation filing, no emergency protocol invoked. He checked 3 more databases. because it seemed impossible that 78 warships could be in motion without a paper trail and found nothing, no flight plans, no diplomatic notifications, no traffic corridor requests. They had simply gone. He sent a signal intercept request to his technical team: pull whatever you can from the human fleet. Banned, he told them, anything. He did not expect much. Human military encryption had improved sharply in recent years, but on open channels sometimes there were crumbs. 40 minutes later, his team sent him a file, a single transmission recorded off an open channel, Admiral Voss speaking to her crew before departure. His translator rendered it in clean lines. Girth read it again, read it a third time. He sent it upstairs to Director Avi with one note attached: I do not think they understand that fleets do not move for individuals. Ath's reply came back in under 2 minutes, 4 words: we are the ones who do not. Gareth pinned the transmission to his board and looked at it for a long time. On the other side of the sector, the Varath fleet commander received different news. Ashar commanded the Verth Border Patrol, 8 ships, posting that had been quiet for 3 years and had become considerably less quiet in the past 8 months as the Crethon pressed into the outer colonies. She was at her command table reviewing the latest supply estimates when her communications officer flagged an incoming proximity alert. 78 unidentified warships, human configuration, entering Varath sovereign space. She read the alert twice, stood up, moved to the display. They were not stopping at the border checkpoint. They had not hailed. They had not transmitted identification or filed an approach vector. They were inside Varath space and already moving deeper, and their speed said they were not here to have a conversation. She prepared for a crisis, for a diplomatic incident, for something that would need to be managed carefully and immediately, and probably involve a great deal of communication with people who outranked her. What she got was a second alert 3 minutes later from her signals team. They had pulled a transmission off the human fleet's open channel. Her translator handled it quickly. She read it. Asher sat down. She read it again. Then she contacted Girth Station because the Dravathi had the best intelligence network in the sector, and she needed to know if anyone had any idea what was happening, and also because she needed another thinking mind that was not currently her own. Girth sent her what he had. She looked at the 3 sentences Admiral Voss had spoken to her crew at the name in the sender field on the original signal. Subcommander Sethri. Third reach at the coordinates at the human fleet's current heading, which had not changed by a single degree. She did something then that Asher almost never did. She laughed. It was not a long laugh. It was short and involuntary, the kind that comes when something lands in a way you were not prepared for, when the world rearranges itself around a fact you did not have room for. She composed herself, contacted her own fleet, opened a channel to the outer colony's command. Stand down your alert status on the human fleet, she said. They are not a threat. Her officer on the other end was quiet for a moment. Fleet Commander, 78 warships unannounced in sovereign. Stand down, Asher said. Let them pass. Another pause. What is their objective? Ashar looked at the transmission. 1 more time, Adet, she said. 9 ships. 11 million people, and running out of time. Seth had been holding the perimeter at reach of salt for 11 days. The Crethon had not attacked. They had Not needed to. Their 62 ships formed a net around the colony, not tight enough to be an act of war. Tight enough to make it clear that resupply was over, that reinforcement was over, that the only path remaining was the one the Chthon chose to leave open. It was the way the Chthon won things, not with force, with the patient, quiet removal of alternatives. Seth had 9 ships. He held his perimeter because there was nothing else to hold and no other choice available. He had sent messages to Varath Command. He had sent requests to the Coalition. He had filed his situation report 3 times in 3 different formats in case one of them reached someone who could do something. And then 4 days ago, at the end of a shift he had barely slept through, he had opened a civilian bin transmitter and sent 3 words and a coordinate to the one human whose name he still had in his records from a collapsed station 17 years ago. He had not expected a reply. He had not expected anything. It had been a gesture toward the universe, the kind you make when you have exhausted the official gestures. He had not received a reply. He had accepted this and kept holding the perimeter. His sensor officer, a young Verth named Orth, found him in the command room at 3:40 station time. She had the particular stillness of someone carrying news they have not yet decided how to deliver. Sub-commander, she said. He looked up. I am reading FTL signatures, she said. 17 contacts, 20. 30, she stopped, recounted. Sub-commander, I am reading 78 FTL signatures dropping out of transit. Human configuration, all of them. Sethri set down the report he had been reading, stood up, walked to the sensor display. He looked at it. 78 ships, human, all of them dropping out of FTL in organized sequence, taking positions, orienting toward the Chthon net around reach of Salt. He stood at the display for a long time. Orth waited. He thought of the transmission he had sent 4 days ago. 3 words and a coordinate to a survey tech whose name had been in one line of an incident report. That was what he had sent. This was what had arrived. He said it came out very quietly. He did not know it was her word. He would not know until later when they were sitting across from each other in a docking bay. And she said it, and he recognized the sound and understood something he could not fully name. He pulled on his command jacket, fastened it. Battle stations, he said, and get me Admiral Voss. Part 4. The Chthon saw them coming. Of course they did. 78 warships do not arrive quietly. They drop out of FTL and they take positions and they orient their weapon systems, and they do not hide. Mara had not asked them to hide. She had asked them to be visible. She had asked them to be what they were, the Chthon Fleet Commander, a long-form title that translated roughly to Master of Strategic Reach, a rank earned through 30 years of expansion operations. Looked at the sensor returns and ran the numbers. 62 Chthon ships against 78 human warships that had appeared without warning. He ran the numbers again. He had fought humans twice before, both times in the early contact period before humans had built what they had now. The humans, he remembered, were cautious, methodical, prone to defensive postures, and cautious probe and retreat tactics. They did not like to take losses. They calculated risk carefully. He opened a channel to the human fleet. Standard protocol: identify yourself, state your jurisdiction, state your objective, the kind of exchange that happened thousands of times across monitored space every day, the procedural language of species that had learned to talk before they learned to stop shooting. The response came back from the Perennials bridge. Admiral Voss's voice was flat, not cold, not aggressive, flat in the specific way of someone who has already finished the conversation in their head and is simply narrating its outcome aloud. My objective is Subcommander Seth of the Third Reach, Varath Compact, she said. He moved one of mine out of the way of dying. I am returning the favor. Pause 3 seconds. You are in the way. The Crethon commander replayed this transmission 4 times. He ran it through his linguistic analysis unit to check for coded language embedded command's secondary layer, meaning he had his intelligence officer review it. His intelligence officer reviewed it and reported with some apparent difficulty that it appeared to mean exactly what it said. The Chthon commander did not fire immediately. He waited. Mara did not wait. The order she gave Lena was precise and calm and 16 words long. Lena related to the fleet. In under a minute, the human formation moved. It moved not like a charge, not like an aggressive thrust. It moved the way water moves into a space when the container tilts. Inevitable, patient, filling available room with no hesitation and no rush. 30 ships pushed toward the Chthon net's northern arc. 20 shifted to the south. 18 held the center, the Perennial among them. 10 remained at depth uncommitted. The Crethon net was designed to hold against 9 ships. It was designed to hold against a force approximately its own size. It was designed for most things. It was not designed for this. The Chthon fired first. 3 ships on the northern arc took the initial volley. Heavy directed energy, the kind the Chthon had been using for 40 years and had refined into something extremely precise and extremely damaging. 1 human destroyer took a hit that stripped its forward shield array and gouged a scar across its upper hull plating from stem to midship. The ship shook. Alarms went off. It did not stop. It kept its position in the line and continued advancing. The Chthon fired again. Same destroyer took a second hit, this one to its port maneuvering array. It lost 20% of its lateral thrust. Its commander, a woman named Iris Farrow, from somewhere in northern Canada, routed power from secondary systems in a way that violated 3 engineering guidelines and would be written up later in a report she clearly did not care about, and the ship kept moving. On the Perennials bridge, Danny Cole reported the damage. Mara heard the numbers. Pull them back, Lena asked, not recommending it, asking. No, Mara said, send 2 ships to cover her. She holds position. The battle was not elegant. It was not the clean, decisive engagement that people describe in history files, the kind with a clear turning point and a moment where everything changes in one sweep of brilliant tactics. It was grinding. It was sustained. It was the specific, exhausting kind of fighting that comes from 2 forces that have both decided not to move, and one of them is more committed to that decision than the other has yet understood. The Chthon were very good. They had 62 ships and they used them intelligently, cycling their attack patterns, refusing to give the human formation clean angles, pulling back when pressed and re-engaging from new positions. In any standard military assessment, they were handling the engagement the way a force of their size should handle a force of similar size. That had no tactical surprise. What they had not accounted for was that the humans had not come here to win a tactical engagement. They had come to stay. There is a difference. It is a difference most species understand intellectually, and very few can execute emotionally. Winning means achieving an objective. Staying means absorbing cost after cost and being unmoved by it, not because you don't feel the cost, but because you have already decided that the cost does not change the answer. Mara's crew felt every hit. She could see it on their faces, the flinch when a ship in the formation took damage, the tight focus that comes from processing bad news and choosing not to let it become fear. They felt it, and then they kept moving. 2 hours into the engagement, the Chthon commander tried again. Open channel. Admiral Voss, you have taken significant casualties. You have no treaty obligation in this space. Your stated objective, 1 Varath officer, does not justify the losses you are accumulating. Stand down and we can. No, Mara said. 1 word. Channel closed. 3 more minutes of fighting. The pen in her left hand tapped her knee. Once, twice, her tactical officer kept her status updates flowing, and Mara processed each one and gave responses that were short and specific and never included a single word about what they were going to do if this didn't work, because that was not a thing she was holding space for. Lena reported that the second destroyer commander Pharaoh's ship had lost its port weapons array completely and was running on 60% power. Pharaoh's status. Mara asked. Crew intact, ship functional. She holds Admiral. She holds Lena. Pharaoh held. The Chthon commander tried once more. Different approach this time, not negotiation, not threat. He came on the open channel and he asked a question, and the question was simple. Why? Not the strategic why, not why are you here, which he understood on paper. The other why, the one underneath. 1 individual, he said. 1 soldiers. Act 17 years past, you have lost ships. For this, you have taken casualties. For this, I have commanded fleets for 30 years. I have never seen a fleet move. For an individual, I need to understand what you are. Mara's pen was still. She looked at the main display, the battle. Around her, her people, Sethri and LT, Unk and GT. 9 ships still holding their perimeter. Around reach of salt, still there, still steady. She took the channel. 17 years ago, she said, a Varath soldier found a human standing in the way of dying and moved her. She paused, not because there was a treaty, not because there was an order, because it was in front of him and he corrected it. Another pause. We are the thing that remembers that. We are the thing that shows up when the accounting is due. 1 more pause. You have been in the way for 4 hours. I suggest you stop. She closed the channel. The bridge was quiet. Danny was looking at her from his station. Lena was looking at the tactical display. Sam Pierce, her navigator, had turned halfway in his seat and then turned back. Nobody said anything. They didn't need to. The Chthon command hesitation lasted 6 minutes and 40 seconds. Mara watched it on the tactical board. The formation shifting, reorienting, the firing patterns becoming inconsistent, gaps appearing in the net around reach of salt that had not been there before. The Chthon had fought many species. They had learned over 30 years of expansion. Operations how to read the moment. An opponent's will collapses before their body does. It was the most important reading in any engagement. More important than weapon status, more Important than fuel states the moment when the other side stops believing in the outcome. They looked at the human fleet. The human fleet had not moved. It had not thinned. The ships that had taken damage were still in there. Positioned, still oriented, still committed. There was no reading in it. No gap, no moment where the belief had gone soft. The Crethon broke. Not from casualties, not from tactical defeat. On paper, the numbers were not catastrophic, not yet. They broke from the specific and entirely novel terror of fighting something that was not afraid of the cost, something that had done the math before it arrived and had already accepted the answer and was simply working through the process. Now they jumped out in sequence, the formation dissolving from the south arc first and then collapsing inward until the last ship was gone, and then it was just the human fleet and Seth's 9 ships and the colony of Reach of Salt still breathing behind them. The silence on the Perennials bridge lasted 4 seconds. Danny exhaled. It was the longest exhale Mara had ever heard from another human being. Lena reported the formation status, casualties, damage assessment, 2 destroyers mission limited, 3 ships requiring significant repair, no personnel losses. She said this last part and then stopped talking and looked at Mara. Mara looked at the display, the Crethon signatures fatting on the long reign board, 11 million Vareth on the colony below, alive, breathing. Good, she said. That was all she said. She tapped her pen on her knee once more and then set it down. Part 5. Paperwork started immediately. It always did. Mara had been a soldier long enough to know that the end of a fight is where the real work begins. Damage reports, medical assessments, fleet position updates, a formal notification to Coalition Command, which was going to be interesting to write and probably more interesting to explain in person at whatever review was going to follow this, a preliminary incident report, the kind that tells the basic facts without interpretation, because interpretation is for people who were not there and need to feel useful. She wrote it all in her office on the perennial inverth orbital space around Reach of Salt, with a cold coffee from this morning finally replaced by a hot cup that she was also not drinking. She wrote for 3 hours. Iris Farrow, commanding officer of the destroyer Enduring, sent a brief message. Ship operational at 62%, crew intact, no fatalities. Requesting resupply when available. Mara replied, resupply is coming. Well done, she wanted to say. More than that, she said exactly that. The Coalition Liaison Office sent a communication marked urgent that contained 14 questions, which she forwarded to her legal officer with a note that said draft responses, no rush. The legal officer, a careful woman named Claire Doyle, who had a gift for making extraordinary things sound procedural, sent back a draft 4 hours later that was so calm it might have been describing a routine navigational dispute. Mara approved it entirely. The Dravathi Intelligence Network sent formal query about the nature and authorization of the operation. Ashar, the Verth Fleet Commander, had already sent them a preliminary response on humanity's behalf, a courtesy Mara had not asked for and was genuinely grateful for, though she would not say that word out loud. She sent Asher a brief message that said, thank you for the courtesy. Asher replied, I am keeping a copy of that transmission for my records. I think I will read it occasionally when I need to remember what accountability Looks like, Mara set her pen down and looked at that reply for a moment, then she went to find Sethri. He was not in the formal meeting space his staff had prepared. She had expected that he was in a Vareth docking bay at the far end of the colony's orbital platform, a wide industrial space that smelled of machine, oil and metal, and the particular sharpness of a station that had been under stress for 11 days and was just beginning to exhale. Several of his crew were there running post-engagement checks on a docked patrol ship. Nobody was talking much, the quiet of people who have been afraid for a long time and are now slowly putting it down. He was sitting on an equipment crate near the bay's far wall, eating something from a container that a Vera quartermaster had apparently assured him was suitable for human consumption. He had not yet tested this claim seriously. The container was in his hand and he was looking at it with the expression of a man who has survived something difficult and is prepared to believe for the moment that anything is possible. She walked across the bay. He saw her coming when she was about 20 m away. He stood up, not from ceremony, from a reflex that had nothing to do with rank. "Admiral Voss," he said. "Subcommander," she said. She reached the crate and sat down on the one beside it. He sat back down. They were quiet for a moment. In the middle of the bay, his crew moved around the patrol ship, and the sounds of the work tools, voices in Vera, the hiss of a pressure seal being tested gave the silence between them. "Shape, you brought 78 ships," he said. 76, she said, "to our mission. Limited." He looked at her. "They will fly again," she said. Nobody was lost. He was quiet. She watched his face process this, not the tactical math of it, the other math, the math that a soldier does when they understand the size of what was spent on their behalf, when the number lands not as a statistic, but as weight. "I sent that transmission to one human," he said. His standard was the same as she remembered it, accented, precise, each word placed with intention. "I was not asking for," he stopped, began again. "I did not expect a fleet." "I know," she said. "Then why?" She looked at him. "He meant the fleet," she answered. "Something slightly different. You moved me," she said, 17 years ago in a burning corridor on Cathara Station. You moved me out of the way." He was still. Something passed behind his eyes, the effort of placing it. The corridor, the smoke, the human standing still. "Yes," he said. "Not because of a treaty," she said. "Not because of an order or a protocol or anything written down anywhere. Because it was in front of you. You were in the way of dying." He said. "I moved you." "Yes," she said. She reached into the inside pocket of her jacket, left side close to her ribs. She took out the old data pad, dead screen, cracked corner to corner in a clean diagonal, and set it on the crate. Between them, he looked at it. The fracture, the old model casing worn smooth with handling. He had seen that crack before, 17 years ago, in a burning corridor, in the hand of a human who had not been moving. He did not ask what it meant. She did not explain it. They sat with it between them on the crate in the quiet of the docking bay, and the meaning of it was in the air between them, not spoken, not needing to be. Some things do not require translation. Some things are simply understood by the people who were present when they happened, and everyone else is only ever partially informed. He looked at her and then looked at the old data pad, and she watched him do the math she had done so many times over 17 years. One moment, one small correction. 17 years of accumulating interest on it. 2 destroyers, 76 ships, 11 million. Lives still breathing in the colony. Below them, she could see the moment the number landed. He was quiet for a long time. When he finally spoke, he did not say anything about the fleet or the battle or the Chthon or what it had cost. He said something that she had not expected and that she would think about for many years afterward, and that she never repeated to anyone because some things are not for repeating. He said, "I am glad I took the shortcut." She looked at him, not at the rank on his uniform, not at the 16 years of service between the corridor and this docking bay, just at him. "So am I," she said. It was the closest she had ever come to saying the thing she had never said. She did not say the rest of it. She did not say, "You did not know what you were moving me out of the way of," and it was not only the station. She did not say any of that. She did not need to. The cracked data pad was there between them, and it said enough. She stood up. She picked up the data pad, put it back in her inside pocket. "Get some rest," she said. "Your crew needs to see you do it." "Admiral," he said. She turned. "What happens now?" He said it seriously. "Not about the fleet, not about the diplomatic aftermath. The larger question." She looked at him. "We file the paperwork," she said, "and then the galaxy has to figure out what to do with the fact that we showed up." She walked back across the bay. She did not look back. She did not need to. The galaxy did not know what to do with it as it turned out. Not immediately. The Dravathi Intelligence Network spent 3 weeks analyzing the engagement. Girth wrote a formal assessment, 40 pages, thorough, methodical, full of charts and tactical diagrams and fleet movement analysis, and then wrote one final paragraph that his superior told him was not standard for intelligence reports and that he refused to remove. The paragraph said, "We have been categorizing the human species incorrectly for 20 years. We have understood them as cautious, methodical, reluctant to take losses. These assessments were accurate. What we failed to account for is that all of those qualities are conditional. When a human considers a debt paid, the calculus changes completely. They do not become reckless, they become immovable. These are different things, and the difference matters enormously." The Vareth High Command issued a diplomatic statement, careful, measured, the kind of language that means something significant has happened, and everyone is going to pretend for a while that the significance is manageable. The statement acknowledged the human fleet's action as falling within acceptable parameters of Allied support and requested a formal meeting at the earliest convenience of the relevant parties. Ashar's private message to her staff, sent the same evening as the formal statement, was considerably shorter. "Never give a human a reason to come find you unless you want them to actually do it." The Chthon filed no official response. They did not have to. Their fleet had jumped. The accounting of that jump, a 62-ship force breaking contact against an opposing force that had taken significant damage and was still advancing, was a number that moved through military analysis circles across 4 species with the quiet, persistent energy of a fact that refuses to be forgotten. Analysts argued about what had broken the Chthon. They argued about tactics, about positioning, about the logistics of the human fleet approach. They built charts and ran simulations. None of their simulations could replicate the result. The variable they could not account for was the thing Girth had written in his final paragraph, the thing that cannot be simulated because it does not come from training or tactical doctrine or ship design. It comes from somewhere else, from a specific kind of decision made a long time before the battle, that the battle is just the execution of. Mara Vass filed her reports. She appeared before the Coalition Review Board 6 weeks after Reach of Salt and answered every question fully and calmly and without apology. And the Review Board, which contained representatives from 5 species, found after 11 hours of deliberation that her actions were, after considerable deliberation and some significant revision of existing frameworks within acceptable operational parameters. The framework revision took 8 months and produced 47 pages of new language, most of which was simply an attempt to describe something that had already happened, as if it had been anticipated. She went back to work. She still had the cracked data pad. She had carried it for 17 years, and she still had it tucked in the inside left pocket of whatever jacket she was wearing on whatever ship she was commanding. It had outlasted 3 postings and 5 jacket replacements and 1 very thorough equipment audit in which she had held it in her hand and looked at the auditing officer until the officer moved on. It was not a talisman. She did not think of it that way. It was a record, the most compressed record she had ever kept of the most important fact in her life, that a specific thing had happened, and that because it had happened she was here, and because she was here 76 ships were operational, and because those ships were operational 11 million people were alive. That is the math, the complete accounting, no footnotes. Somewhere in the Dravathy officer training program, a copy of Girth's assessment had been incorporated into the curriculum's unit on allied species psychology. The final paragraph, the one about the conditional nature of human caution, about the distinction between reckless and immovable, was the unit's opening section. There was a Dravathy cadet 19 years old who read that paragraph during his first week of training and marked it in his notes, and then sat with it for a long time in his bunk, turning the idea over and over. The specific way you turn something over when you know it is going to change how you see things. He was a careful person, methodical. He believed in procedure and documentation and the structured systems that allowed different species to share a very large and complicated galaxy without destroying each other. He believed in these things sincerely. He still thought about the paragraph in his 23rd year of service, when he was a senior strategic officer and had trained hundreds of junior analysts. He would begin every first session with the same sentence: there is a species in this galaxy that moves fleets for individuals. He let that sit. Then what that means is not that they are irrational. What that means is that they calculate debt differently. They calculate it in full, over any span of time, without limitation. When they decide you are in the way of a debt being paid, the only effective response is to remove yourself from the way. There is no second option. He taught this for 20 years. Students who heard it always asked the same question: is it true? He always answered the same way: look up the Battle of Reach of Salt. He would say, look at what they moved. Look at why. Then decide whether you want to be owed a debt by a human, or whether you want to be in the way of one being paid. He never told them which was more dangerous. They always figured it out. Mara Vass was walking the perennials observation corridor late on a Tuesday, which was her habit when she needed to think, which was most evenings. The corridor ran along the ship's port side, floor-toseling windows, stars on the other side of the glass. She walked. She was not thinking about reach of salt. She was not thinking about the review board or the 47 pages of new framework language or the 6 separate congratulatory messages from command that she had acknowledged and filed. She was not thinking about what had been written about her in 4 different species intelligence assessments or what the Dravathi training program was teaching junior officers. She was thinking about a ceiling panel swinging on a wire, about a flat, empty room behind her ribs that had slowly, over 17 years, stopped being empty, not filled all at once, gradually, decision by decision, next right thing by next right thing, until what had been a number she did not want to look at became a number she could stand behind. She walked to the end of the corridor, where the stars were brightest, and stood at the window. The cracked data pad was in her pocket. She pressed her hand flat against it through the fabric of her jacket, felt the shape of it, the fractured line under her palm, after all, this time as familiar as a scar. One shortcut, one empty corridor, one alien soldier who had looked at a misplaced thing and moved it. She thought, I have been moving ever since, not because she had to, because 17 years ago, in a burning corridor on a station that no longer existed, something had rearranged, not filled, not then, just shifted, and she had followed the shift, one step at a time, for 17 years through. Every morning that could have been the one where she stopped and wasn't. She pressed her hand against the pocket. She said very quietly to no one in particular. Then she turned around and walked back toward the bridge. There was work to do. There was always work to do. She was very good at it.